one of the people who has inserted herself into sort of the news is our friend Ann Coulter, who's on the phone right now. Ann, is it really you?
It's really me, Eric.
It's
By
really
the way, let's
you.
continue to have the best music in radio.
Well, thank you. That's saying a lot. I thought Wolfman Jack was number one. No, Cousin Brucey. No, okay.
Very eclectic.
I'm eclectic. People often say that about me, and that's just true. I like a lot of different kinds of things, but mostly Supertramp and Peter Frampton. I do
I've gone onto your webpage to get songs I want to download.
Oh, actually, you know what? You remind me. I want to say to folks that we have done that now. We have gone on, if you go to metaxastalk.com, we've got all of the bumper music is there. And we're going to, I think we have a Spotify account. So if people just want to listen to this music, and or at least we'll be getting that up very soon, just because people say, well, I want to listen to that music, and, I don't want to have to download it all. It's too complicated, take too long. But thank you for complimenting the music. It makes me happy. That's really why it's there. It just makes me happy, and I think that's not a bad thing. Now, there's so much to talk about. A few days ago, and you know what? Even before I get into that, I was just going to say that this is the first time on this radio program that I have ever had someone that I would describe as a raving anti-Semite. So, Ann Coulter, welcome to the program. You're in that, in Annie Hall, when he says, I know that's a classic Jew hater, when he's talking about Grammy Hall, the classic Jew hater. That's what you are, Ann Coulter. You're blonde. You're from New Canaan, Connecticut. You're considered the classic Jew hater. So now people are wondering, what is Eric saying? Can you please explain to the listeners what I'm saying?
It's precisely because what you're saying is funny. That I think this was the fastest hate campaign against me in world history. I used to go through these about once every 6 months over my excellent joke about John Edwards, about my untoward remarks about Katie Couric, what I said about the Jersey Girls. And usually, a week goes by before the tide starts to turn and people realize I was misquoted. And the unpleasant part of it is going through the hate campaign. The good part of it is that it usually brings attention to something important. In this case, it always brings attention to something important because they have to go back and see what I actually said. In this case, the hate campaign, if you blinked, you missed it. It was over in a day, and, it probably is because it's so preposterous with anyone at all familiar with my writing. I had been, on the day of the debate last week, my column was denouncing Republicans for their incessant use of applause lines instead of talking about real things that make a real difference. And by the way, things the candidates disagree on, to wit, immigration, which is the most important issue because everything is secondary to immigration. It decides every other issue, which I've sent other tweets out about, for example, on abortion about a month ago when I saw Donald Trump's magnificent immigration plan. And if you haven't read it, I recommend you go and read it. It's just a few pages, and the media is not going to tell you what's in it. It is absolutely perfect. As I said, the greatest political document since the Magna Carta. And in one of my enthusiastic
Now, for the people who are listening, this is I just want people to understand you. So if you actually say something bad, we can say, yes, that was actually bad. But when you say something like the greatest document since the Magna Carta, that's called hyperbole.
Yes.
You don't literally mean it's the greatest document since the Magna Carta. It's called hyperbole. And thank you for the line, so I can help people understand what is
hyperbole. But that's only because we also have the Federalist Papers and the U.S. Constitution. If I throw those in, I think we're getting pretty straight to the honest truth. But I also tweeted out, which again made a point and was based on hyperbole, or was hyperbole. I don't care if Donald Trump performs abortions in the White House, provided he keeps this plan on immigration. Number one, obviously hyperbole, I'm pro-life. Donald Trump is pro-life. But it makes the important point, We've been talking about this for 30 years. How exactly do Republicans plan to overturn Roe v. Wade when they can't get a president elected again, and we end up with a Supreme Court of all Ruth Bader Ginsburgs and Sonia Sotomayors? How is that going to happen exactly? Describe to me what you're going to do to stop abortion. Every other issue is secondary to immigration for this reason. Anyway, this is what was kind of driving me crazy about all of the candidates' interviews. It was particularly the pandering on Reagan and abortion. We are a pro-life party since, as I wrote in the column last week, I guess, since the hero of 9/11, Rudy Giuliani, ran for office and couldn't get out of the starting gate because he was pro-choice, we are not going to have a nominee who is pro-choice. The Republican Party is solidly pro-life. We don't need to see, to determine who the best Republican nominee would be by seeing who can denounce abortion with more vitriol. No, they actually, the candidates on that stage disagree and disagree seriously about the immigration issue, which will determine the outcome of the abortion war, which will determine the outcome of everything. And all these guys comparing themselves to Reagan, and I'm optimistic, and I follow the policy of a little governor from Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan didn't win a spectacular victory against the party apparatchiks, I might add, terrifying the Republican insiders when he ran and was dominating the polls the summer before the election. Come into office, save America, and crush the Soviet Union by giving speeches talking about how great he thought, Dwight Eisenhower was. But that's what all these guys do. So first my column goes up like an hour before the debate starts, denouncing these guys for their pandering. Then throughout the debate, I'm live tweeting. Lots of grammatical errors because I have to listen and tweet at the same time. And I was attacking them. Once again, we get the pandering. One I hadn't anticipated in my column that day was, we got pandering on Reagan, pandering on abortion, and pandering on how much we love Israel.
Okay, now can I ask you to pause for 1 second? We don't have to go to break. I want to clarify, because you talk very quickly, and not everyone is as up on these things as you are, right? So I just want to say that when you say pandering, what you mean, just to be clear, is that you're saying they're basically wasting time.
Yes.
Because if they don't, you're saying if they don't address this immigration issue, there's nothing to discuss on abortion. We're never going to be able to do anything on it. So if you care about abortion, we need to solve that. If you care about other stuff, we need to solve that. And you said you hated the applause line thing. My question to you is, isn't that just typical politics? Why does it upset you that much that they're doing that? Seriously.
Well, one guy wasn't doing it. And that was my candidate, because he's the one who has thrown open this issue that both parties have agreed, let's just not talk about it.
Wait, no. Chris Christie was doing it. I almost got you. I could tell just for a second there.
I flipped on Chris Christie as soon as he came out for Rubio's amnesty bill and then pushed through in-state tuition. It's very simple to follow my positions.
Okay, hold on. Now, we really are going to a break. We're going to be right back with Ann Coulter discussing the debate, presidential politics, all kinds of good stuff, folks. It's the Eric Metaxas Show. Metaxastalk.com. Hey, you're listening to the Eric Metaxas Show. I'm talking to my guest, Ann Coulter. We're talking about the debate the other night, and Ann, you were live tweeting furiously. And let me just say that I would halfway take issue with you on the abortion thing only because of this. Because if it's just about abortion, you're quite right. They can talk all they want, but what are they going to do about it? And they can't do anything about it if the whole country changes demographically, so they should worry about immigration. I get that. But what Carly Fiorina said about Planned Parenthood and this scandal, I actually thought was wonderful, because it's the first time someplace in the mainstream media you've had a full-throated condemnation of something so horrific, and tons of people have watched those videos because she spoke about it. So if only for that, not about the abortion issue in general, but specifically this scandal, which is a tipping point. So I really was thrilled about that. But the larger point, is well taken.
And I did not attack her for that.
And okay. All right.
Attacked her for other things. But anyway, so I'm tweeting about all sorts of things. There was a very brief discussion of immigration, which I'd like to get back to, because all the other candidates flipped their positions and pretended to agree with Donald Trump by and large.
By the way, did you write a book on immigration?
A very important book that everyone should read to understand everything that's going to happen in the next 18 months.
What is the working title of that book?
The working title is Adios America, the Left's Plan to Turn Our Country into a Third World Hellhole.
Adios America. It's why did you use titles with English words? It's so strange that you feel the need to use a Spanish word, Anne. Shame on you. Please continue.
So among very other important and pertinent tweets, I tweet out, Rubio running to be curator of the Reagan Museum. Huckabee goes on some Israel tear. I say Huckabee running to be PM of Israel. And then at the very end, the final question was, we're in the Reagan Library, and there are all these ways he changed America. At the end of your administration, how will America be different? And the first four candidates to talk instantly start talking about Israel. So I tweet out, in question about, all caps, America, I forget who it was, Rubio, Huckabee, I think Cruz, Christie, Kasich, one of them, talk about, all caps, Israel. Next tweet continued. How many effing Jews, and effing, not spelled out, though I did spell out a curse word in a tweet on global warming.
Well, wait a second. Did you write EFFING, or did you use the word?
Didn't use the word. That's what I'm saying.
You didn't use the word?
No.
Okay, that's key. That's pretty key, because I was under the impression that you had used that word, and I thought, would Ann Coulter use that word in a tweet? I don't think she would do that, and I'm glad you didn't.
You have to go look at the tweets. They all flow together. It was a brilliant live tweeting scheme on the grammatical errors.
I was also live tweeting, which means I didn't have time to read all of your brilliant live tweets.
I know, but yours probably didn't have grammatical errors. How many effing Jews do they think live here anyway? Next tweet, or maybe it's for the evangelicals, and so on. And so, okay, yeah, if I had not been live tweeting and tweeting it out, I did give them the ingredients by putting the effing word next to the Jews word, the capacity to pull the ingredients out, reassemble it as a bomb, but it wasn't effing Jews, it was how many. I mean,
you could have said
quantity matter. How many effing blondes do they need on Fox News?
Right.
We need baseball cards.
I know we need a better adjective, but
no, the
I know
adjective is fine because that's what makes it funny. But it could have been placed in, like, when you look back at that sentence, it might not have been quite as funny, but it could have been placed in like 5 different places in that sentence, and it would have been impossible to pull it out and reassemble it as a bomb.
You know something.
Anyway,
this is why you're. This is why I admire you as a writer, because you get what we're talking about. The idea that a syllable, the order of words, that these things make a huge difference in how something is delivered, especially if you're looking for comic effect for a joke. And so the way you put it. It does have that effect. But again, for listeners who don't know what happened then is people didn't just take issue with you writing what you wrote or saying, but they took those 2 words, effing Jews, and basically said that you are an anti-Semite. And I have to say, people can think all kinds of things about Ann Coulter, but the idea that people would seriously think that you're anti-Semitic is so bizarre. I mean, people can hate you, but they cannot accuse you of anti-Semitism. So it really was
Israel. I mean, I have a whole chapter in my current book praising Israel and Netanyahu and saying I want to be more like them.
Only one chapter?
They defend their chapter in Adios America, the left's plan to turn our country into a third world hell, which is why it was a one-day scandal. And my Facebook operator, he takes my tweets and puts them up on Facebook. That apparently doesn't happen automatically. And he said, he sent me a few of them, but he said you've gotten thousands of emails from your Jewish followers saying this is nonsense and keep going.
Well, look, as I say, it's ridiculous. If you're going to be angry at someone or dislike someone, at least dislike them for something that's real and true. It is an absurd thing that people would say that about you. the thing is this.
I think if I could talk about two other scandals for a second, that's why some scandals work and some don't. It has to fit in with the persona. So, for example, the Bill Maher thing, this is going back a while, so your young listeners aren't going to remember this. What got him thrown off the second highest late night show, his show, Politically Incorrect, for what he said after 9/11, it wasn't what he said. It was more that it fit in with this whole sneering Hollywood attitude that people didn't like after 9/11. Similarly, right now, this scandalette with The View, I don't know if you followed this, but...
Yeah, no, this is bizarre. This is so strange that it's even a scandal.
I agree. My understanding, and, maybe I missed something that they're not showing me on the other networks, but I do notice it's their competitors who are attacking them for this. But they were making fun of a beauty contestant talent, of her talent being talking about her job. So she's not, I haven't seen a beauty contest in a while, but don't they usually play the flute or tap dance or something? It's a talent. All she's doing is talking about what she does. Now, what she does happens to be being a nurse, so everyone's interpreting this as an attack on nurses. But as I see what they saw, what they said, and again, maybe they said something I didn't see, all they were saying was, this isn't a talent talking about your job, however incredibly important that job is.
Right.
But the reason I think it might be having, even though if I'm correct in my understanding on that, even though I think this is silly, it's fitting into the idea of New York elites sneering at regular people doing important jobs.
Right. Right. I love the idea that you're making a meta point, a big point about the scandals. That's very well said. And I love the idea that you cited tap dancing as one of the talents that beauty queens. And that's because that's 2 out of 3 are tap dancers. And there's a lot of jugglers now. I don't know if you know, they juggle flaming stuff.
Well, I only know what I know about beauty contests from Miss Congeniality.
Right. Well, or for when we were kids watching this kind of stuff, when they probably did do a lot of tap dancing. But anyway, I think that I want to talk to you. So we've established you're not an anti-Semite. Phew. Wow. I want to talk to you. We really, the other day, this is to me another scandal that's not a scandal. Ben Carson said that he wouldn't advocate a Muslim being president. He didn't say, I hate Muslims. He didn't say, he said he wouldn't advocate, because he was asked, a Muslim being president. Now, it shows you he's not a great politician because he stepped into that. He should have just said, shut up and talk about whatever he wants to talk about. But he answered it honestly, and everybody jumps on him, including Ted Cruz and Carly Fiorina, who both said that, this is not, I'm a constitutionalist, Ted Cruz said, and Fiorina said something similar. And I thought, gosh, can't you just give people a break? Does everything have to be this kind of, he said this and he said this and he said this and she said this? So I don't remember. I want to come back to what Donald Trump, the exchange that Donald Trump had with the questioner, and I want to get your take on that.
Good. I've been dying to talk about that.
Yes, no, we've got to talk about it. Folks, my guest is Ann Coulter. Yes, the Ann Coulter, as far as I know. And this is the Eric Metaxas Show. Our website is metaxastalk.com. If you go to metaxastalk.com before midnight, you have a choice of either a cup of soup or a haircut. You choose. We'll be right back. Hey there, folks. This is the Eric Metaxas Show. I'm talking to my guest, Ann Coulter. We're talking about politics, which you might expect. And we're just talking about Ben Carson talking about how he didn't think a Muslim should be president. We can unpack that in a second. But also, there was this huge exchange, or actually, I take it back. It was a big nothing exchange with Donald Trump and a questioner, and it blew up into one of those things, these scandals that last for, as long as a bubble lasts, but they're huge. It was unfathomable to me that people all over the news were talking about the fact that this some guy in a crowd stands up and kind of raves about we've got a Muslim problem, our president is a Muslim or whatever. And by the way, who cares? It's just one of those big who cares. People have their opinions. They say these things. But people freaked out that Donald Trump did not correct him.
Yeah, no,
which is so bizarre.
I really love this one for various reasons. By the way, I am a huge Trump supporter because of the immigration issue, but what has surprised me, and that tweet, the abortion tweet, I don't care if he performs abortions in the White House, if he sticks with this immigration policy, although that sort of summarizes my views, and I will tend to defend him on anything because he is the only one who will save the country from just what's happening to Europe right now. He's the only one talking about the most important issue. I must say I have been surprised at how good he is on things I don't expect him to be good on. And that Muslim question was a perfect example of it. For one thing, I am convinced, and the evidence is starting to bubble up now, that guy was a liberal plant. I've seen liberal plants before. People who actually think Obama is a Muslim do not say it the way he did it. He said it he sounded like a Hollywood liberal imitating an angry right-winger.
Wow.
And Breitbart has a story, I don't know if it's been confirmed yet, but it had a story earlier this week saying this is a guy who used to show up at tea parties pretending to be racist. This is totally a liberal sabotage, I'm convinced. But point two, I used to work for the Senate Judiciary Committee and knew Joe Biden's guys. And Joe Biden, I think anyone would admit, is a very good politician. He has political skills, like you've never seen before. And so I was talking to one of his guys one time, about how a politician reacts to weird circumstances. It may have been when I was writing my first book. And, this probably happens to all of us. You get a call of someone who seems to be a supporter, but it's a nut. So what do? You don't want to insult your supporter. And by the way, I'm not running for office. So anyway, the Biden guy told me, it stuck with me because, okay, this is what you do when this happens. Told me a story about Biden being on a stage one time, and some local Democrat on the dais with him tells a racist joke. So what does he do? He's there, this is a Democrat event, and here's a Democrat on the stage. And the staffer told me what you do is you laugh and shake your head. And that is exactly what Donald Trump did in an hilarious way. And by the way, I've noticed the media is editing this out. As soon as the questioner got to that Muslim part, Donald Trump looks out at the audience and sarcastically says, "First question, that's great."
Okay, so that was not reported.
Perfect political response. Then he gets to, it's something about, Muslims starting camps or something. And then he gives a total blow-off answer. Oh, yes, we've heard people talking about this. We're going to be looking at this and all kinds of things. This country is going to be great. Next question.
Wow.
It was the most perfect political answer.
By the way, you need a cup of coffee before this next segment.
Well, I am amazed at this. And I will also say he had a great response to the Ben Carson thing, which was to make a joke about it. He was asked about what Carson said, and he said something like, "Yeah, I think it would be okay. Some people say we already have one."
Yeah, well, it is funny, and it gets to the issue. This is one thing I have to say, since I care about faith very much. The discussions of faith in public life tend really to be stupid, because when people say so-and-so's a Muslim or so-and-so's a Christian, don't we have to discuss what that even means?
Yeah.
What does it mean to be a Muslim? I know Muslims who are cultural Muslims. To them, they don't really care too much about it. It's just this thing that they do. They don't look like they take it all that seriously. They're cultural Muslims in the way that many, many, many Americans are cultural Christians. They say, I'm Irish, I'm Italian, yeah, I'm Catholic, I'm Christian, but they're not really. It's just a kind of a cultural thing. So when somebody says Obama is a Muslim, Obama is a Christian, I kind of think most folks like that I would describe as kind of, secular globalists who are maybe friendly toward the Christian narrative. But
when
the difference
is a Muslim thing first came up, I wrote a ferocious column defending him and pointing out that, like his fellow Democrats, he's an atheist.
Well, it's kind of funny because I think the other thing, too, is that we talk so much about theology. And there's this other thing, it's one thing to have orthodox theology, but then you have to have orthopraxy, which means if you aren't living it who really cares what you say you believe? It becomes meaningless. And so I think that, and that goes for me and for you and for all of us. You know, you can say we're this or that, but people are looking at our lives. Anyway, folks, we've got another 2 segments with Ann Coulter. It's the Eric Metaxas Show. We're talking about everything Metaxastalk.com. We'll be right back. Hey, folks, it's the Eric Metaxas Show. I'm talking to Ann Coulter. And Ann Coulter, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Here's my question. Do you ever apologize?
Sure, when I've done something wrong. I would say personal apologies.
You're making it sound very theoretical.
Generally not in public life because I don't think I've done anything wrong in public life. That's a fairly limited spectrum.
So you don't think you've ever said anything that later on you say, meh, probably it was not a good idea to say that?
That's different from what you might apologize for, but no, not particularly.
Interesting. I just had to ask because it's interesting. That's something that, of course, in some ways that you have in common with your candidate, Donald Trump, is this idea that you're very forthright and you don't back down. It's an interesting thing, and I think that he's kind of played it into, it's almost like a semi-comic persona, which enables it to work, I guess, is my point.
I agree with that, yeah. But Trump is hardly the only one. I mean, this has become a sort of liberal obsession demanding that Republicans apologize for this or that. The press has become our official apology demanders.
Well, no, but I agree. You know, I agree with you. But in the case of Trump, there's at least 1 or 2 things that he said that I think it would have been not just right for him to apologize, but it would have been beneficial for him. It would have shown people another side of him, and so I think that it was politically disadvantageous.
I think
of
it is
him.
Never ever a good idea. I mean, there may be an exception I'll see someday. But to actually issue what you're describing as a formal apology, you can take things
not
back.
a formal apology, but I mean, what the things that he said, for example, about Rosie O'Donnell. But
the argument we've had before about Trump was over the McCain thing, and within 10 seconds he's talking about McCain being a war hero. He is essentially taking it back. To have come out and said, "Oh, the press is demanding it,"
No. You're right.
Formal apology. No, that's bad. But look. You're always talking. You're moving forward. You don't go back and review and accede to the media's demands for an apology. When people talk, especially when people talk fast, you're going to trip once in a while. You'll say things wrong, whether it's it hurt my feelings, and, forget that. But you're also going to misstate things. You hear people, this is why I almost don't mind making fun of Obama for misspeaking, like about 57 states and so on. Although, in reality, I think it's stupid to make fun of that. He's obviously a bright man. As was George Bush, but they do it so much with Republicans. Look, if you talk on TV, you're going to slip, you're going to use the wrong word sometimes, and obsessing over what was said. No, just go forward and say the next thing.
Well, I guess I'm thinking the stuff that he said about Rosie O'Donnell, I think it would have been great for him to say something in that debate like just anything, because you don't really want to stand behind. I think when a man calls a woman what he said about her, you just don't want to model that for young men in America, that's how we talk about, even if it is Rosie O'Donnell. It's just not healthy. And I wished he had taken that opportunity.
It's not just that it's Rosie O'Donnell, it's that it's so over the top, it's comic, and you can't apologize for something that's comic.
Well, okay. If it's comic,
said in a serious way. If he weren't, which is hard to imagine, so you have to imagine he's not Donald Trump, he's not Jackie Mason, who is the man he reminds me the most of.
Me too. That's funny you say that. Are you kidding? I've been thinking about that. That's the one. When I was writing my stuff on the Trump Bible tweets, I don't know if you even saw that, but when I was writing them, I kept thinking it's like I'm writing for a comic character, like a New York, figure like Ed Koch or Jackie Mason. It's got this, and the people haven't talked about that, by the way, is that Donald Trump is the quintessential New Yorker.
Yeah.
I mean, Absolutely, and that's where he gets his comic persona and the timing and stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of the country is so flat-footed they don't get that, but a lot of people just instinctively love it because it's funny and it's entertaining. But so when you say Jackie Mason, honestly, I have been thinking the exact same thing. That's very funny.
I want to run clips of Jackie Mason side by side with Trump because I think it's so similar. But my point is, if he had said something, if he weren't himself, if he were someone like, I don't know, Ted Cruz, and Ted Cruz is very smart, very articulate, but not funny. That's why I'm choosing him. If he had said something unkind about a woman, it wouldn't have been something that made people laugh. And that you could take back. You can't take back something that is said, that is an exaggeration said for a joke.
All right, we better move on because I could talk to you for 45 minutes about that. Okay, Carly Fiorina. The reason Carly Fiorina, I think, is doing well in the polls, and I saw flickers of this. I don't know when. I guess when she first responded to Trump, I thought, this is a woman who can joke and who feels comfortable in her skin. And that really typically is lacking in GOP candidates. Obviously, Trump has it, but she really does, too. She can joke around and make fun of herself.
She was not joking.
When?
That entire, I ought to say, before I say anything about Carly, the true reason I intensely oppose her is because she forgot the Civil War and she thinks the 14th Amendment is about illegal aliens running across the border and dropping babies, announcing they're citizens. I think she's completely wrong about that. I think she is completely wrong when she says, as she did, quote, walls don't work. No, have been shown not to be particularly effective. I'm waiting to hear if she thinks buckets and wheels are effective. Okay, I'm going into it saying that. But observing her performance, and particularly, I saw part. Not
in the debate. I'm not saying she was funny in the debate.
Oh my gosh, she did not smile the whole time. Do you remember?
Well, she was. It's called being Thatcheresque.
Sour. There was every other candidate smiled. They're trying to say, oh, this is sexist that they say she looks like a sourpuss. No. Every candidate smiles at some point. She was so angry and sour, and even the answer that got the huge standing ovation from the establishment Republicans in the audience with her girl power and every woman heard what you said. It was so angry. Remember they used to say about the first George Bush, I don't know if you remember this, but...
we're going into a break. Hold that brilliant thought. It's Ann Coulter on the Eric Metaxas Show. We'll be right back. Hey there, it's the Eric Metaxas Show. I'm talking to Ann Coulter, and Ann, you were in the middle of saying something about the first President Bush.
Yes, the attack on him was, which I don't particularly agree with, but it came from, liberal women, that his problem was he reminds you of your first ex-husband. Remember?
Oh, that was said about him? Holy cow! I thought that was said about Romney or something.
No. That was the first time I heard it. They have a lot of marriages, these liberals, lots of exes. But it was something to that effect that women didn't like him because he reminded them of their first ex-husband.
Right.
And I look at Carly and I think she reminds me of the meanest school principal I ever had. She's always scowling, and I saw some of the debate with the sound off repeated over the weekend. And it's especially noticeable with the sound off. The rest of them, even Jeb Bush, who isn't exactly, light and funny, even he smiled a few times. Kasich, Chris.
Well, look, it worked. It worked for her, Ann.
Angry the whole time.
Whatever she did worked for her. It made her look Thatcheresque. And let me say this: when she was on, I almost said Jay Leno, Steve Allen, Jack Parr. What's the show? Jimmy Fallon. One of the Jimmys, Jimmy Fallon. She was there, and in other places where I've seen her, there's an affability and a joking, and so she really can do both, and she can joke with Trump. And what she said about him, I can tell when somebody's flirting with me, and then she said maybe I'm getting under his skin.
That was a really bad joke. That took way too long. You are a very funny person. The joke was good. The wind up took 20 minutes. So but it wasn't. Walk 6 miles to pet the dog.
No, now you're just being mean. No, it's kind of funny because Trump has twisted your mind. Actually, it's funny because I do think that she's the only one besides Trump that I think has an ability to pull off sort of being anywhere in the media and joking. I mean, Ted Cruz looked very wooden on where was he? He was on the.
Yeah,
He's got Letterman.
Unfortunately, Cruz is so smart. He's so articulate. It's like a genie gave him 3 wishes, and he said, I want to be smart and articulate and never stumble over my words. Okay, you got it, you got it, you got it. But the genie doesn't tell you. It's like all those stories with the 3 wishes. Doesn't tell you, but there's going to be a 6-minute pause between each word that's going to be so hokey it's going to drive people crazy.
Yeah.
Because he's incredibly articulate. He's incredibly... My theory is something slightly different, which goes up in tonight's column, posted at 6 p.m. Wednesday night. And that is... And this is what I hate about calling these Washington insiders and the political operatives, the elites. No, they're all utter mediocrities. And just, by the way, we're a classless society. We're not supposed to notice this, but Trump, Fiorina, Ben Carson, Wharton School of Business, worth $11 billion. Carly, Stanford Law School, worth $80 million. Ben Carson, Yale University of Michigan Medical School, separated conjoined twins, first one ever conjoined at the brain. Other than Cruz, they're the only genuine elites in this race, and I think that comes through, and that's what people like about them.
Well, amazingly, we're out of time. Ann Coulter, you're very entertaining, which makes the time fly. Thank you for being my guest. We'll be back again with Ann Coulter at another time. Gabe Lyons is my guest in the next hour. So many good things. Thanks for listening. It's the Eric Metaxas Show.